Get ready to reimagine the future of humanity and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, hosted by Dr. David Gruder, an internationally renowned integrative psychologist, human potential expert, author, and social change catalyst, as he delves into the most urgent issues of our time. With the world facing unprecedented challenges and social and political divides growing deeper, it's time to take action. Each episode of this groundbreaking series will empower you with invaluable insights, strategies, and tools to heal these divisions and restore personal freedom and societal well-being. Whether you're a concerned citizen, a courageous leader, an influential figure, or an ambitious entrepreneur, Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will guide you on a transformative journey. Discover your unique role in creating a brighter future for yourself and society at large. Dr. David Gruder will draw upon his extensive knowledge and experience to provide practical solutions for shaping the world we live in. With his passionate exploration of social change, he will help you navigate through the complexities of our time and inspire you to make a meaningful impact. So, prepare yourself for an eye-opening experience as we delve deep into the heart of the matter. Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will challenge your perspectives, ignite your imagination, and equip you with the tools you need to reimagine and redefine the world around you. The time to transform our future is now. Join us on this incredible journey and enter a new era of possibility. For more information on Dr. David Gruder and the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, visit www.rhfy.ca. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, where together, we create a brighter tomorrow. Now, here is the host of Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, Dr. David Gruder.
Welcome back to the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. I'm your host, Dr. David Gruder, the polymath of human potential and societal psychotherapist who equips leading-edge leaders, influencers, helping professionals, and you with impactful resilience that makes it possible for humanity's most spiritually elevated future to at last emerge. I have a special treat for you in this episode. As I developed it, I realized that this is actually the first in a periodic set of episodes in which I'll reveal my personal stories related to a range of fascinating themes. The title of that mini-series is going to be Breaking the Mold, Crushing Defeats, and Mystical Moments That Sculpted Me Toward Love and Purpose. The title of this first episode in that mini-series is Reimagining Your Life Path, Breaking Molds, Embodying Purpose. Want to make more sense of your life? You're not alone. The crushing lows I've experienced in life taught me grit. Turning points deepened my purpose, and mystical highs lifted me into new realms of possibility. In the first two segments of this episode, you'll hear stories about how my soul growth mission and spiritual paradigm evolved. In the final two segments, you'll discover stories about how my impact mission as a futurist, integrationist, and leader emerged. You're about to take a journey through my crushing defeats, mystical highs, miracles, and other turning points that sculpted my soul growth and impact missions. A soul growth mission is our highest self-development purpose that is so significant that it will require the better part of a lifetime to fully accomplish, if not longer. An impact mission is our highest calling to positively influence the world around us in our own unique ways. My purpose in telling these stories is twofold. First, for you to feel less alone with your own life experiences. And second, so you can gain glimpses into how you might step more fully into your soul growth and impact missions. Think of this as a whodunit of self-discovery. May these stories spark your genius to reimagine your path by helping you discover heightened ways to break your molds and more fully embody your unique calling. Open your heart as we dive into raw, heart-wrenching, and soul-uplifting stories you likely never knew about me. I'll start with the first one, which is from actually before childhood. So some people have they have past life experiences, and some people, fewer people, report having a between life experience. I came in with one of those. I have a before life memory in which I, in non-physical form, my presence is, and I can only express this kind of metaphorically, but it'll sound literal, but it's not literal. It's as though there's a semicircle of enlightened beings behind my energetic presence, and I am right at the threshold, kind of a door frame, the equivalent energetically of a door frame, with the equivalent of my hands white knuckled gripping around the edges of the door frame, and I'm pleading with these enlightened souls behind me, my what I refer to as my spiritual crew, to not make me go back there meaning here on earth. I'm saying to them, don't you know how much I love it here? I'll do anything you ask, anything at all, whatever you want me to do, just don't make me go back there again. And their response, with full unconditional love and uncompromising challenge, was to say to me, you don't understand that what your soul growth needs next, you can only do there, meaning here on earth, not here, meaning in those spiritual realms. You can only do that there, because only there can you come to really get in the core of your being that nothing in the physical universe can either harm you or save you. So with that, I was energetically thrust through this metaphorical doorframe into physical reality. And for what turned out to be the first 35 years of my life, I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles that I was here as punishment. And I'll get back to that story in a little while. Um, that's what I struggled with. And so I came in with pretty much lifelong clarity about what my soul growth mission was, which again was to really get in the core of my being that nothing in this physical universe can either harm me or save me. Well, that's a tall order, and it's taken me all of my lifetime thus far to make progress with that, and I'm still not done mastering that. Well, my first profoundly mystical experience happened when I was 13 years old. Ironically, I was raised Jewish. It happened during my bar mitzvah ceremony. So I was chanting in Hebrew a portion of that ceremony, which you may not be familiar with, but if you are, it's a portion of the service called the Haftorah. It's a section of the Old Testament, and as I was chanting that, I had an experience that I was never prepared for, that I had no worldview to make sense of it, but I experienced it anyway. And the experience I had was that the sanctuary became fully imbued with light and music. And there was no me there. All there was the music coming through me. I was by then a pretty well trained musician. I started soloing in trombone and voice when I was in 5th grade. And so now I'm 13 years old, very comfortable doing that kind of thing. And but I disappeared. All there was the music that was infusing the sanctuary with a level of mystical oneness and love that was transcendent. I was in what I didn't know to call was an altered state, and I could see that everyone in the sanctuary looked utterly transfixed, as I felt too, whatever left was left of me to feel that. And about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through that, this question came into me. And the question was, where are you, David? Because there was no me. All there was this music that was coming through me. And in that moment, I panicked because I had never had an experience like this. And like I said, I had no worldview to help me understand this. And so I paused for a moment, and people told me afterwards they didn't even hardly notice that I paused. And I regrouped, and I then finished that portion of the ceremony with musical and Hebrew precision, but without that transcendent sense of oneness and not I-ness. And so, what I was gifted with during my bar mitzvah was a contrasting experience between being a conduit of higher love, wisdom, and power versus being a seemingly separated ego, and the difference in my felt experience between those two states. That was my bar mitzvah present. So that then leads me, I mean, there are so many experiences that I could share, and I only can share a couple of slices. But the next one that I will share is um, is a big one that happened when I was a couple of months before my 18th birthday. And so I was still 17 years old and was back home. I was in college. I was back home for a holiday break and got together with some friends of mine from high school. We were kind of like the four musketeers who would stay up late at night talking philosophy and all kinds of, high level discussions. And at the in the wee hours of the morning, one of my friends looked at the rest of us, and with authentic pain inside himself, he said, I have been struggling with a really deep question in it, and I don't have an answer to it, and I really feel like I need an answer to it. And I want to ask that question specifically because of all the people I know. The one that I want to hear an answer from is you, David. And now I'm gulping and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm only 17. What's he going to lay on me, on us? And and then he says, I need you all, the rest of the four of us, the three of us, to promise not to laugh when I ask you that question. We all solemnly promised to not laugh, and we didn't laugh because we saw the pain. We felt the pain in him. And then he lays the question on me: what is reality? And my internal reaction, and I didn't say it out loud, was, how should I know? My God, I'm only 17 years old, but I felt his pain. I loved him. I wanted to serve him. And I had another mystical experience. And that mystical experience, I also didn't have a framing for yet. It was another one of those get out of the way and something's going to come through you kinds of experiences. And here's what came through: I cannot tell you what reality is. What I can tell you with certainty is that there is nowhere to stand, that every single belief system that this planet has ever seen, including science, every single belief system has its own set of core assumptions that are neither verifiable nor unverifiable. And the best of those belief systems, everything that's built on those unverifiable assumptions, is completely congruent, completely aligned with those unverifiable assumptions. So, the thing I recommend to you is find a belief system that most helps you feel the way that your highest self most wants to feel and helps you act in the world the way your highest self most wants you to act in the world, and embrace that belief system unconditionally. At the end of that, my jaw was bouncing off the floor. What just happened? And I also realized that what came through me for him was for me too. And so, with that, I'll leave you with a cliffhanger, because I'm going to share more stories in the next segment about my soul growth mission and its evolution and the evolution of my psychospiritual paradigm. And for now, we're going to go to a brief break. This is Dr. David Gruder on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we will be back in a couple of moments. And we're back. So the next experience I want to share with you was another of my profoundly mystical experiences that I had at age 24. I was on a break. I took a leave of absence halfway through my doctoral program. I was on my way to getting a PhD in clinical and organizational development psychology, and I took a break after my master's in those two things, and was after saving up a bunch of money while working, I was on a 6-month backpacking trip through Europe. And I was in the midst, in one part of the trip, of reading a book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And wonderful book. And I was in a chapter where Yogananda was talking about one of his spiritual teachers named Babaji, and was talking about how this was a timeless, ageless being who was in physical form sometimes, and that people who authentically called out to him in need in their mind's eye, he would come and help them. And I, being interested in these things and yet a skeptic about them, I thought, oh well, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to give this a try, because at that moment that I had that thought, I was on a train from Stockholm, Sweden to Oslo, Norway. And I was feeling particularly lonely at that point in the trip, and I was wanting some companionship, at least for a couple of days, to quench the loneliness. And so in my mind's eye, I went into an altered state, and I called upon Babaji and asked Babaji for help with that. And Babaji came to me with a very simple statement. And this is word for word all of what he said. You will meet her in Oslo and not on the train. Had no idea who her was and why not on the train. And so I just noted that and was curious. So I get to Oslo, I'm in the train station, and I hear a voice from behind me calling out, David, David. And I'm thinking, well, they're not calling for me, but they kept calling David. So I finally turned around, and it turned out to be a woman that I had met earlier on during that trip, and had really felt a connection with her. And I said to her, "Oh, wow, what a wonderful thing to run into you. Where are you going? Are you arriving? Are you leaving? Where did you come from?" And she says, "No, I just got off the train from Stockholm." So Babaji's words, you will meet her in Oslo and not on the train. Bada bing. And I was stunned. I was speechless. The next story that I'll share with you was another miracle story, and it happened when I was 28. So this happened. This was a healing that I experienced with my father that taught me a huge amount about my soul growth mission, my spiritual journey, and my evolution psychospiritually. So I entered adulthood hating my father. And I hated him because he was a rageaholic and a pontificator. And I got a lot of gifts and blessings from him too. So I don't want you to be thinking in this story that all I did was hate him and I got nothing from him. I got huge gold from him. But I hated him because he was a rageaholic and he didn't know how to talk to me. And I entered adulthood feeling pretty certain that I was never going to get over hating him. And through a bunch of therapy I went through, and workshops and reading and classes in psychology and spiritual development, finally, by the time I was 28, I had reconnected with love for my father. And that felt like a miracle in and of itself. Well, I had come out to California for graduate school. I grew up in and around New York City and was back in New York visiting my parents. And to make a longer story shorter, just to get to the punchline, my father went into one of his rageaholic fits. And it was in response to my noticing that his skin was yellow and he had symptoms that were alarming to me. And I knew he hated going to doctors. And I sat down with him privately and said to him what I was observing. And I had my doctor at this point in time, and I said to him, among other things, these observables, these symptoms could mean that there's something not happy about your liver. And I know you hate going to doctors, but I love you. And would you be willing, at least for me, to go see a doctor to at least rule out that there's nothing wrong with your liver? If I said kidney before, I meant liver. Um, and and so my father exploded. And whenever he would explode, he would stop talking. And he would usually stop talking for weeks, sometimes for months. The longest I went with him not talking to me when I was growing up under my parents' roof was 6 months. The longest that my brother went was 9 months. And at whatever point, whether weeks or months, he would start talking at the family member he was angry at. He would start talking as though nothing had ever happened, and with an unspoken expectation that we would never talk about it. We'd never figure out what happened. We'd never make a plan for handling future similar situations better. We were just supposed to breathe a sigh of relief and and be happy that he was talking again. He only did this behind closed doors. He didn't do this publicly. He was beloved in his community. And for good reason, he did a lot of wonderful volunteer work and was very, very competent and all of those things. But behind closed doors, he would do this with my mother, my brother, or me. So when you didn't apologize to him, whether warranted or unwarranted, he would pick a fight. And so I didn't apologize to him. And so he picks a fight and he says to me, um, you're um, you're a bullshitter, is what he says to me. And my response to him about what I had said to him. And my response to him was, yeah, I can be a bullshitter. I know that. And I've been working on it and I've been making progress on that, but I've got a way to go still. So no defensiveness. I was transparent with him in my response rather than getting in his face and dishing out rage at him the way I'd had done in my late teens, or running away with my tail between my legs, which I had done prior to my late teens. I just was able to respond to him. And he then says, "Well, stop playing doctor." And I said to him, "Dad, well, yes, I'm not a physician. I'm a psychologist. And as a psychologist, I've been trained to a fair extent in the body. And I've also been trained to know what my limits are in what I do and don't know about the body. And I have limits, and I know that. But, Dad, I am a doctor." Well, now he's getting more and more agitated because his attempts to hook me weren't working. And now he starts telling me about research on livers. Now, my dad had more IQ points than me. And I'm listening to him tell me, pontificate about research on livers, and everything he's saying is wrong. And at this point, I started to lose it just a little bit, mostly state centered, but not fully. And And I immediately disclosed to him what my reaction was. And I said to him, Dad, you know what? And this was true for me. I'm just now realizing, which I was just in that moment, that I come by my bullshitting honestly because you're bullshitting now. Now he is fit to be tied, absolutely beyond furious. And that's when I had a miracle. Because unlike all of my prior experiences, where when he would explode and I would go into a hypervigilance mode, trying to figure out how to protect myself, either by walking away with my tail between my legs, like I said earlier, or in my late teens, getting in his face and dishing out back to him what he was dishing out to me, I had this question come through me. David, how are you doing right now? And in that moment that question came through me while he was busy exploding and I wasn't hooked by that and I was paying attention inside myself, I had the major miracle. And the major miracle was I realized in that moment that I did not know how to love my father in ways that felt like love to him. And I finally had reconnected with love toward him. So that was important to me. Well, I immediately shared that with him. I said, Dad, I'm just this moment realizing that I love you. And I have never known how to love you in ways that feel like love to you. Will you teach me? And tears came to the eyes of a World War II veteran who wasn't a crier. And he lapsed from one of those rageaholic silences into a really tender-hearted, thoughtful silence, a sacred silence, which I wasn't going to interrupt. I just kept him company um, while he processed that. And after a couple of minutes, he says to me 3 sentences that I'll never forget. I'd like to do that. I don't know how, but I'm willing to try. And that moment marked the last time he ever had a rageaholic attack with my mother, my brother, or me for what turned out to be the final 6 years of his life. Well, that was incredibly instructive to me about the power of love and the power of staying centered in the face of what seemed like attack. I have more stories to tell after the next break. This is Dr. David Gruder on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we'll be back momentarily. And we're back. Well, I am starting to see that maybe I won't have enough time to go through everything I wanted to share about my impact mission as a futurist, integrationist, and leader. I may have time to do a couple of those stories, but I want to keep going with the soul growth mission and psycho-spiritual paradigm evolution stories. And we'll get through what we get through because, like I said, this is the first in what'll be a mini series. And so where I'm going to pick up with is actually with this whole notion of believing for the first 35 years of my life that I was here on earth as punishment. When I was 35 years old, I was getting more professional help. And my healer at the time, who knew about this script that I had, finally said to me in exasperation, David, what is it going to take for you to finally get over this notion that you're here as punishment? And I didn't see any way that was going to be able to happen. And so I decided to call upon something that I had read in a series of mystical texts called A Course in Miracles. It's a 3-volume set with a couple of compendiums, a text a workbook and a guide and a couple of compendiums, like I said. And in A Course in Miracles, what it talks about is that in order to have a miracle, which A Course in Miracles defines as a shift in perception that shifts you from fear to love, um, all it takes is a little bit of willingness. And I thought to myself, well, that's all I can find in me is a little willingness. And so what I said to my healer at the time was these words: I'm willing to consider the possibility that maybe I'm wrong about being here as punishment. And what unfolded over the next couple of months was proof that all it took for a miracle to happen was a little willingness, because over that subsequent set of months, I ended up substantially healing my belief that I was here as punishment, and ended up embracing my soul growth mission, which, as I said in the first segment, was to really get in the core of my being that nothing in the physical universe can either harm me or save me. Well, that's part of how my dad's story ties into all of this. Well, dad had another influence on me, and it was about somewhere between 3 and 6 months after he died in 1988. I had wanted to believe that consciousness survived death, and uh, but I wanted proof. I wanted, I was an open skeptic. I wanted a personal proof experience that it was real. That reading books about that wasn't enough for me. And so somewhere between 3 and 6 months after dad's death, and I had felt as though I felt his presence during that time following his death. Dad came to me in inner consciousness, in an inner awareness, and he says to me, David, I have a message for your mother. Are you willing to give it to her? And I said to him, yes, of course, Dad. What is that? He proceeds to give me a message to convey to my mother that sounded like complete gobbledygook. It made no sense at all to me. And that's how I responded to Dad. I said, Dad, this makes no sense. It's complete gobbledygook. And his response was, that doesn't matter. Your mother will understand. And I said to him, okay, I will convey your message exactly as you've conveyed it to me. So my mother was still living on the East Coast of the United States at that time. I was living, as I have since 1975, in San Diego. I called her up. Now, she and I had had conversations about these things, and so I didn't have to prepare her for what I was about to say. I called her. She answers the phone, and I simply lead off with saying, Mom, I have a message from Dad. Because again, we had prior context, so I could do that with her in that way. And I said, I have a message from Dad. Are you open to hearing it? And she says, yes, of course. And so I then, without any preface, without saying this makes no sense to me or anything like that, I just was a faithful messenger, and I conveyed the message to her that Dad had asked me to convey to her. She bursts into tears. Now, Mom had been in really deep grief and had told me she felt very, very stuck prior to this conversation that I had had with her. And the tears that she burst into were tears that I recognized as transformative, that something was shifting inside her. So after I kept her company and after her tears subsided, I simply said to her, Mom, are you are you having those tears because what what Dad said to me to share with you makes sense to you? And she says, yes. And I'm shocked now because I thought I was just sharing gibberish with her and taking a leap of faith. And I said to her, well, what does this mean to you? And she says to me, this was your father's way of telling me that I'm free to love again. And in that moment, I realized my father had given both my mother and me a huge blessing. He had given my mom a message that helped her liberate herself and move forward with completing her grieving and move into what turned out to be a really amazing final chapter in her life for the 20 plus years that she lived after dad's death. And he had given me a profound blessing because, in delivering to me a message to convey to mom that struck me as complete gibberish and made no sense to me, I couldn't pass it off in my mind as something that my unconscious mind had made up because I wanted to soothe my mother. It made no sense to me. So I couldn't have made it up myself. And so dad had given me a huge blessing by giving me the personal proof that I had been seeking, that consciousness survives death. Well, all of this informs my worldview in really, really profound ways because, as a societal psychotherapist, when I look upon all of the craziness that's going on in the world today, I have the muscles to look on that insanity and not get sucked into it. And that's part of my soul growth mission, is to be able to be in the world and not of it, to be a conduit of higher love and wisdom and power in the physical universe. And doing that requires me to have a worldview that I can neither prove nor disprove, going back to that story from when I was 17 years old, the What is Reality story, that helps me feel the way my highest self wants to feel and act in the world the way my highest self wants to act. So I can look upon all of that insanity and respond to it with the people that are in my spheres of influence in ways that are helpful, in ways that support my impact mission in the world. And so that's the heart of the soul growth mission and paradigm missions or paradigm evolution spiritually that I wanted to share with you, with one final thing, which was uh, a a soul crushing defeat in 2002, where I was bludgeoned into surrender. Every part of my life came crashing down on me 6 months after 9/11, which is its own story because I was back in New York when 9/11 happened, and that had a huge impact on my impact mission. But in terms of my soul growth mission, I was crushed because the marriage that I was in at that time, that I thought was bulletproof and everyone around me thought was bulletproof, came to an end that was shocking to me. And I had built the structure of my career around my first wife and me. So that version of my career came crashing down when she announced that she no longer loved me and she was divorcing me. And shortly after that, the financial independence that we had co-created came crashing down. And so I was paralyzed. I was literally incapable of getting out of bed for 3 weeks, no exaggeration, 3 weeks after she announced that she was leaving and left. And after 3 weeks of this, I had finally hit bottom. I didn't know what to do. And so I rolled out of bed onto the floor on my knees and uttered a prayer, the likes of which I had never uttered before in my life. And I didn't even ever think of as a prayer because it was an ultimatum to all that was of 100% light and love and spirit, all of my spiritual crew, guides, God, angels, archangels, whatever was pure love and light that was surrounding me, that was able to help me. Here's the ultimatum that I issued, because I was in deeper emotional pain than I had ever been in my adult life. And I said, either gifts come from this pain that are far greater then this pain is deep, or I am out of here. And I meant suicide. I meant suicide by out of here. And it was an ultimatum from the core of my being. And I had been around the block with other, tough learning experiences to know that gifts come only gradually over time. Well, so I wasn't impatient about that, but I started getting answers within a couple of hours after that. And those answers told me that my prayer was going to be answered. And the first of those answers was that for the first time in those 3 weeks, I finally had enough life energy to get out of the house and go outside and take in the fresh air. And the second part of the miracle is what I'm going to share after the next break, out of which I made a solemn oath that I was never again going to be needing to be bludgeoned into surrender in order to attend to wake up calls. So, next segment coming up. This is Dr. David Gruder on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we'll be back momentarily. And we're back. Well, so here's the rest of that story, that bludgeoning into surrender story from 2002. As I was outside, I was actually rollerblading around San Diego Bay. And in the midst of rollerblading, I had something start to emerge inside me that required me to get off my feet immediately to allow it unfold. And of course, as orchestration would have it, I happened at that moment to be passing by a grassy area so that I could immediately get off my feet and lie on my back. And so as I'm lying on my back, what emerged inside me was, the only way I can describe it is as a theme specific afterlife review. So if you've read any books about, or have heard people talk about, or maybe have experienced yourself a near death experience, then you know that there are a lot of stories about when people are in the midst of a near death experience, they're taken through a life review, and they're not looking on, all kinds of lovely things. They're also looking on mistakes they've made and impacts that those have had. And somehow the way that that life review happens doesn't leave them in a state of shame, even though they look on certain things that could be shaming, but in a state of, oh, that's what that was for. Well, that's what was happening inside of me in that moment as I was lying on the grass. My afterlife review was theme specific. I was shown the origins of my arrogance, and I was taken through my timeline from the origins of my arrogance in childhood all the way through that present moment, and shown specific incidents where my arrogance had had negative impact on me and on people around me. So I was being shown a very not pretty picture, a very ugly picture around that slice of my shadow. And yet, as that life review, that theme specific life review completed, I didn't feel shame. I felt grateful, because I saw that this was my spiritual crew's way of saying to me, your prayer will ultimately be answered. You will ultimately gain gifts from this experience that are far greater than your pain is deep. And that's exactly what gradually emerged over the 2 years following that, which led to another miracle in and of itself, which was about my being introduced by a mutual friend to my wife, Lori. And that was miraculous, because I didn't think I was going to be married the first time around. And after the end of my first marriage, I was thinking, well, I I had that experience, but I'm unlikely to ever get married again. And proved to be wrong. And I like to say in some ways I got it right the second time, although I did get it right the first time for who I was when I met my first wife. And at some point, I'll share stories about the profound learnings that I got from recovering and healing from the demise of my first marriage and the career that we had co-created together, having to launch a new chapter in my career and having to rebuild financially. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on to a little bit about my impact mission as a futurist, integrationist, and leader. And the uh, the the first thing that I'll share is very brief, which is as a young child, I spent a lot of time on my own because, well, for reasons I'll share in a moment. But my favorite childhood solitary games were dot to dot and mazes because I was enthralled with discovering with dot to dot, where you're connecting dots. And after you've finished connecting the dots, a picture emerges. You see what the picture is that the dots, when they're connected with each other, are showing. And I just was enthralled with connecting dots between seemingly disparate or unconnected elements to see a broader picture emerge. And mazes, I was fascinated with dead ends and with how do you navigate all the way through to the end point of a maze. Well, this was very connected with my having grown up at the high functioning and therefore undiagnosed end of the autism spectrum. I much preferred my inner world of imagination, dot to dot mazes, things like that, over the outer world. And I couldn't read social cues to save my life. And as a result of that, I became a top bullying target in elementary school. It was as though I had this invisible X on my forehead saying, if you're looking for someone to bully, I'm the kid. I'm your kid. And I adopted this innocent victim story that I was being unjustly attacked and bullied and beaten up, because I was also beaten up a lot, that I wore as a badge of honor as a child. And that really implanted loyalty to a martyr's storyline that reinforced this whole notion that I was here on earth as punishment. And around that time in elementary school, where that really got fully drilled into my internal storyline, I came to a conclusion at around 10 years old that my parents, who it turns out in retrospect were also at the very, very high functioning end of the autism spectrum, didn't know how the world worked. My kid brother didn't know how the world worked. So it was on me. I decided at 10 years old to figure out how the world worked, on behalf of my family as well as myself. So I had to study how to learn how to recognize social cues and stuff about how the world worked that was a total mystery to me. Well, at age 11, I was given another mystical experience that I had no paradigm at that point, no worldview to make sense of, and it scared me tremendously. And I'll tell you that what scared me or what I did with that in a moment. But what was downloaded to me was my impact mission in a form that I couldn't make sense of at 11, but it was still downloaded to me at 11 years old. I was told at that point that I was called to play a significant role in helping heaven on earth emerge. Now, it didn't come in that form. It came in the form, a form of words that not only made no sense to me, but scared me because I thought I was going insane. And it was because my psyche was translating the pure words coming through to me inside of my own limited paradigm. And so this whole notion that I had a significant role to play in helping heaven on earth emerge, I decided that my little red choo-choo had gone around the bend, and it became a dirty little secret that I never shared with anyone because I was certain, right or wrong, that if I shared it with anyone, if I shared it with my parents or anyone else in my life, they would think that I was delusional, I was nuts, and so I shoved it into my shadow. I put it into hiding. It became part of what's called in Jungian psychology golden shadow, parts of our light and our gifts that we decide, right or wrong, we learn or we decide are too much for the world. So we hide them. And so impact mission, my impact mission was something that I was terrified of. I thought was nuts and I didn't want to have anything to do with. And then jumping forward through a whole bunch of other stories that I'll cover in another mini episode in this mini series when I go into the full storyline about my impact mission. I finally started to realize that that I was called to have a bigger impact in the world than I thought I was called to have. And that happened on the heels of being in New York, as I said in the last segment briefly, when 9/11 happened. I was visiting my mom and I had gone back to help her start to prepare the family home to be sold because she had decided she was at a point in her life where she wanted to sell the house. And so 9/11 happens, and I was crushed by it. I knew people who died in the towers, and that led to a new level of clarity about my having played too small, and I had a larger role to play. So when I do a next episode in this mini series, I will share all of what that turned out to be for me and how it emerged, and a bunch of other stories about the evolution of my impact mission in the world. In the meantime, I have a gift for you for having listened to this episode, and it's about how you can take your own next huge steps toward living your dual pronged purpose, your soul growth and impact missions. That's what I call our dual pronged purpose. And the gift is called Shatter Barriers, Build Resilience, Amplify Impact, Your Path to Elevated Purpose. And you can access it at thecess.com/shatter. So that's THECESS.com/ the word shatter, SHATTER, shatter. So it's about shattering barriers. And in my closing comments, what I'll say this: the next age of human potential is upon us, the age of Homo spiritus. I hope you'll join me in helping it emerge, harvesting gifts of great value from all outside the box life experiences is an absolutely vital life skill for all of us who value becoming ever more authentic, connective, and impactful. Crystallizing and actualizing our higher purpose is more important today than ever for those of us who are committed to doing our uniquely authentic part in helping humanity elevate. Again, to take your next steps forward, make sure you get your free copy of my gift for having listened to this episode, Shatter Barriers, Build Resilience, Amplify Impact. And it's at thecess.com/shatter. I enthusiastically invite you to tune in next time for another spell-busting, uplifting, and actionable episode on how together we can and will build a better future for ourselves and for humanity.